Today may have been one of the most important days of the Karen Read trial. For months now, we've been hearing about the ARCCA witnesses. Karen Read has fought very hard to get the ARCCA witnesses in. The Commonwealth opposed them, had fights over this for months. And today, at last, one of the ARCCA witnesses came and testified. They were incredibly powerful at the last trial, and they were coming to this trial with even more ammunition, testing that they had done. It was expensive, bold testing that they say is based in science, and that Karen Read is counting on to show the jury that the Commonwealth's theory cannot possibly be right. She says there's no way she hit John O'Keefe with her car, that's how she broke her taillight, and that he ended up dead as a result of that. She says it's because of inside the home where she was dropping him off to go to a party. So today we heard from Daniel Wolfe, the very first ARCCA witness. So how did he do? Was he as powerful as Karen Read had hoped? And for the Commonwealth, Hank Brennan was facing his biggest test of the trial. How'd he do? And underneath this, there is an overriding question. Was any of this a good idea for Karen Read? Or did all of this testing just manage to show the jury that John O'Keefe's arm theoretically could have shattered the taillight, and that John O'Keefe might not have been injured below the head in the process of that, which has been one of the big issues. So special shout out to the first 5 in tonight's chat: Olivia's mom, aka Sue, Maria Z, KCAM4, Sierra, and Angel LaFawn. Welcome to everybody, and especially to the 5 of y'all. Would you mind hitting the like button? That will help the video get out to more people. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. We would love to have you back for more. I want to make a little statement up front here, because I have a pretty strong opinion in the area of expert witnesses that makes it hard for me to be unbiased. I just don't trust expert witnesses. And that is not because of anything related to any one of them, but it's because of the entire expert witness system and the way that it's set up. Scientific evidence is increasingly necessary. More and more as DNA becomes important, as cell phone evidence becomes important, as technology moves its way into the primary evidence used by the state, that has to be explained to a jury. But it's not necessarily something that's obvious to anyone on the jury. They're lay people. They may not have that scientific background. Even more significantly, it's often completely outside the knowledge of the lawyers who are dealing with the case, of the judge, which makes it difficult. So what I have seen, I many years did auto products litigation, and people exactly like ARCCA were the witnesses for both sides. And this is what I am concluding about the system, is that the expert witness system is really not sustainable. It's too expensive. People are being priced out of the system. You've got hired guns on both sides who say whatever that side is needing, that's who you find to be your witness. And I think it may actually be confusing the jury more. So I just want to put that out on the table. There's some bias that I bring to the table, and I'll just front. And in fact, what I want to do up front, I would like to know kind of what your thoughts on that are. So what I was going to do is do a quick poll and get what your read on expert witnesses is. And I did get feedback. I need to have more than yes and no in the polls. I'm forcing the decision. I, of all people, should know that this is a terrible, idea because I personally have trouble with that. Okay, so I'm just curious about what your general feelings, biases are. And I'm going to ask you, do you trust expert witnesses? I'm just getting the lay of the land. The answer may well be absolutely, or it may not be, and I'll find out. Okay, and I'm going to give you actually 4 options here. And we'll let that kind of percolate while we get started talking about the case and what happened today. So, but I did want to put that out on the table so that you had that and you could go ahead and be doing what you needed to do. So today's witness, Daniel Wolfe, works for ARCCA, and he did a large amount of testing. This is so unusual in a case like this because this is expensive. This is really, really pricey. And for the most part, defendants would not be able to afford a test like this. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the, I've tried to shorten it to just the main tests. And then we're going to look at Brennan's cross-examination. You'll see several of the tests over again in the course of that. So you'll get a good view of them, I think. So I'm going to start with a test that was done at 17 miles per hour. And you're going to see a tail light that's basically on a stick being driven into the arm of a test dummy standing there. So let's go ahead and add that to the stuff.
Go to the next slide, please. What do you note about this impact?
This is just a side view.
Is this in slow motion as well?
This is in slow motion, correct, not real time. This is a...
Okay, so I want to stop there and talk just a little bit about what they were doing. So they were doing a test that would show, okay, what if a tail light indeed ran backwards into John O'Keefe's arm? What would happen? And they did find that there was a crack to the tail light. They did it at 10 miles an hour. They did it at 17 miles an hour. They also did a test where they suspended an arm from a forklift. And personally, I thought this was the least effective test that was done. I thought it was so unlike the real world that it actually sort of undermined the credibility that the witness was otherwise building up. So in my particular case, I found it not real believable. So they started out with test C, 15 mile per hour impact, and the damage was more significant, he said, but still minimal to the taillight. And the sweatshirt that they put, well, you'll see it not in this test, but in various ones. The sweatshirts, he said, didn't have holes. We'll get to that.
A camera that was mounted on top of the forklift that was suspending the arm.
Go ahead. Let's move on to the next one.
You're going to see the Lexus come in from the right and then move across the screen to the left, and you'll see contact occur between the taillight and the arm.
Okay.
So you see the arm moving there along the side of the vehicle. To me, I just didn't find this very convincing because arm doesn't hang in space. An arm is attached to a body.
This is suspended. Does that have any impact on the ultimate analysis or reconstruction, rather than being attached to an AT?
So anticipating my reaction, which is that's ridiculous. Nobody has an arm suspended. Your arm's attached to your body at the shoulder. So anticipating that, Alan Jackson asked him, so does that have any impact on your analysis? Does that change what happened? And he's going to say no.
Effectively, mass is mass. So whether we have an arm that is suspended or attached, again, it's the arm is on a joint, right? So the arm can accelerate freely of the rest of the body, right? So if anything, even if it is attached to the body, there may actually be some additional force associated with that, just because there could be more mass attached to it that is suspended. So you'll see the...
So let's stop it right there. To me, that doesn't sound right. And one of the reasons is that when your arm is attached to your body, then it doesn't have the same motion. You know, your entire body has to be moved by the vehicle. In that case, it's not just your arm that's swinging freely. And so the impact to me, it just seems like naturally my impression is, yeah, it's got to be, it would be a bigger hit if it's attached to a body because you're going to include the weight of the body. But he's saying, yeah, not really. So the the taillight, he did say, did not break in that test. But here they did another test at 29 miles per hour. Again, just the dangling arm.
Lexus entered the frame from the right and impact the arm.
Okay. Was this strike more reflective of what you were attempting to replicate?
Yes.
Okay, let's stop it there. So you're going to see a test they did. Well, I'll go ahead and let that run through. So
okay, thank you.
Next, he does a test with a dummy, not a full crash test dummy because those are so expensive, but a full dummy, an actual replica of a person. And he does it at 24 miles an hour, and then he does it again at 29 miles an hour. But one of the things you'll notice is the way the arm is positioned. You see how it's all the way out. I mean, it's stuck all the way out like that. And it's just not a normal position. I mean, who would be standing there going, oh, look, and our car is coming toward me with their arm stuck out? I just don't picture that. And so, I mean, to me, it's more likely he's holding a glass. His arm is going to be a little bit down by his side. The elbow is going to be somewhat braced into the body or not too able to move, articulate. So I don't know. That was kind of my thinking of it. Here's the test.
You can play this for us, please.
But now notice that the taillight does break into a bunch of pieces. And also notice the dummy runs along the side of the vehicle. Now, one of the reasons for that you're going to hear Hank Brennan ask about, and the dummy is on a harness. So an actual real life person might be thrown away from the vehicle, but this dummy was on a harness, so that wasn't possible. So it was held more or less in place, and that's why it rolled down the side of the vehicle. So now, one of the things that the witness admitted was that they did have one test run they tried where the video malfunctioned. Naturally, that was not something that a
little bit of a false start, so our high speeds weren't triggered, but thankfully, we were able to pull our surveillance video to get at least an overall video of the test taking place.
What are we going to expect to see in this video?
So in this video, you'll see in the surveillance video, the Lexus will come from the right to left, strike the Rescue Randy, and then you'll see the Rescue Randy projected and slide on the ground.
Okay.
So this one's at 29 miles an hour.
Did you reach any opinions?
So he's got his opinions based on the testing that they did for Alan Jackson, Karen Reed's lawyer.
As to whether the damage to the right rear tail light of the subject vehicle is consistent or inconsistent with an impact to a right arm during a high-speed reversing maneuver.
It was inconsistent.
In any of the testing that you did you ever see taillight pieces cut, puncture, or fray the sleeve of that hoodie?
No.
The exemplar hoodie, I should say.
Correct.
Did you reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the rear taillight of the subject SUV was involved in a center of mass strike of a pedestrian at a high-speed rearward maneuver?
Yes.
What is your opinion?
That the damage to the subject Lexus is inconsistent with a center of mass hit.
So he says in this, after he finishes going through all of this testing with the jury, going through it with Alan Jackson, he says, look, my conclusions are that this was not a high-speed reversing maneuver that hit his arm. That isn't what happened. The damage to the taillight doesn't match that. He said that they used a similar hoodie to the one John O'Keefe had been wearing, and he said, I never saw holes or tears in it like I saw on the one that John O'Keefe was actually wearing. And then said that he doesn't see this being a center of mass hit, in other words, in the right in the middle of John O'Keefe's body. So all of those things were helpful for Karen Read. His conclusions were helpful for Karen Read. And now we're going to talk about the cross-examination by Hank Brennan. This is a super important test for him. Cross-examining an expert witness is extremely difficult because they have a knowledge base that you as an attorney don't have. And that's particularly true if they're in a very specialized scientific field and you just don't have that. So for Hank Brennan, this is a challenge he's going to have to meet. One of the things you do is work with your own expert to try to get some ideas and understanding of what some of the weaknesses of the other side would be. So you can take a listen to what he did. We'll talk through it, and I'm going to ask you whether you think it was effective or not effective. I do want to say, as far as people, I would request that you be respectful of people's opinions. This is a very controversial case. I think any of us could agree that there are strongly held opinions on both sides. So one of the things I really hope to be able to do on this channel is to provide a place where people can have a really intelligent, thoughtful discussion about it. And so I would very much appreciate it. Marlon and Mama Pinks are our mods, and I know they are struggling mightily to try to keep everything on an even keel. And I'd just ask, would you help them out? And would you do that as well? So let's take a listen to what Hank Brennan did on his cross-examination. And he started out with just a couple of kind of easy gimme things. Oh, let me do one more. Let me see where we were on our poll. Okay, so as far as whether people trust expert witnesses, we have a 32% yes. No is 9%. Depends on the case. A whopping 49%. Okay, that's actually probably very reasonable. Oh, that's gone up. Wait, 50? Now it's 49. I tried, but it's hard is 10%. So we're going to go ahead and end the poll there. Thank you for participating. I was wondering if, where I stood in the realm of whether this is how most people feel, or is this more based on my specialized background and having done a lot of this work and had to obtain experts. So, okay, now this is what I would like to have on. I'm going to ask you what you thought about the experts testing. And there were several different tests. So pick your if some of them were not persuasive to you, you can go with what your most important one was, the one you thought was most effective. That's totally fine. Was the experts testing convincing? I am going to ask you, and we're going to do yes, no. We'll do somewhat, and then we'll also say we'll just do that. Yes, no, or somewhat. And let's see, why is that not working? I'll have to close that. Let's see. I have the poll here, but it's not starting, I don't think. Here, we'll cut that out and we will start over again. So, was experts testing convincing? And we've got yes, no, and we're adding somewhat. And we will start the poll. There we go. Okay, so give me your thoughts. Thought about the expert witness testimony, not just the testimony, the testing that he did. Was it persuasive to you? Did it help you understand the case better? All right, now Hank Brennan with a couple of kind of easy shots, by which I mean things that are not really all that technical or related to this case. Like, for example, that the witness mentioned in his direct examination that ARCCA works for the Department of Defense, and says, well, actually, you personally have never worked for them. Your company does, but you don't. And also that he had failed his first accident reconstruction certification test. So I'm sure that was a good while back. But anyway, that's where he started. But he kind of moved in the more case-specific cross-examination next. Now, One was that the witness had been ordered to produce text messages, but said deleted all of them. And now he only communicates with the defense using an encrypted app that doesn't save messages at all. He said he'd never done that with anybody else and no longer doing it with them. So, for whatever it's worth, that obviously bothered Hank Brennan. He thought that was suspicious. So the judge did let the Commonwealth about the fact that at the first trial, the witnesses, according to the Commonwealth, tried to pitch themselves as being unbiased. We weren't hired by the defense. We were hired by a named agency, law enforcement agency. We know, of course, that it's the FBI. The jury still doesn't know that. They won't be told that. That's not in evidence. But in the first trial, the pitch from ARCCA was, look, we were hired by the FBI, this unknown agency. We are not biased. We aren't pro-defense. We're just pro figuring out what actually happened. And so the judge let Hank Brennan ask about that and about questions that he had prepared for the defense to ask. So it wasn't as if he just showed up and said, well, whatever you've got to ask, I'll answer. Instead, he made a list of questions and answers for the defense. And he even at one point referred to the Commonwealth as they, as if he were on the side of the defense. That's the argument that Hank Brennan was making. Now let's listen to some of the cross.
You would know to the defense that if they didn't want you to say something that you thought was important, you would leave it out.
Well, I think because I didn't want to confuse the jury about a statistic that just because we have inclement weather and dark lighting conditions, it doesn't automatically equal a pedestrian impact, right? We have to look at the evidence and the damage to the vehicle and the injuries to determine whether or not a collision occurred, not the visibility.
So you weren't trying to mislead the jury, you were trying to help them because they wouldn't understand something that you were trying to explain? Is that the way you're phrasing this?
I think at the end of the day it was to help them understand my background, how it relates to seeing a lot of pedestrian impacts.
Something was important that helps the jury get to the truth. Why would you offer to leave it out?
Well, I didn't leave it out.
No, but you offered to. You would have if requested. Why did you invite, excuse me.
Can we
have any close?
Go to the next slide.
Let's stop it right there.
That supports one side over the other, not the facts of the data, but one side over the other.
Close family?
Yes.
Not that I'm
Why
aware
is
of, no.
it not stopping?
Wife?
Let's remove that.
My wife?
Yes.
I don't really.
There. Okay. All right. So it does sound like at this point that we missed a super juicy fact by the witness claiming he did not know about what is, I'm guessing, a Facebook or some kind of post by his wife, because Hank Brennan says, do you have any, and I don't know where we were in this. I'm a little bit further, I think. Do you have any close family that supports one side over the other? Here's how it kind of went.
I know what her thoughts are on the case.
May I approach?
Yes.
Take a look at that document. Have you seen that before?
No, I have not.
Never seen that.
No.
And then you came into court.
So I'm sure
Last
that
year,
Hank
didn't you?
Brennan was very disappointed right there, because I think what he really wanted was for the witness to say, well, it looks like my wife's Facebook page. Why? I had no idea that and whatever. Or yes, she's a big fan of Karen Reed. I don't know what it would have been, but it does sound like we missed a little bit of tea there, that because the witness said, yeah, I'm not familiar with that. So with the FBI, the ARCCA witnesses started with a theory that John O'Keefe was holding the glass Karen Reed had last gotten at the Waterfall Bar, that he took it out of the car. She says that herself, and that he threw it at the taillight. That's what shattered the taillight. That was what they said at the last trial, but that is not what they said at this trial.
Yes.
And you provided that opinion of consistency to the jury, didn't you?
Yes.
You got up and you said that something to the effect that that speed is consistent with the damage?
Yes.
So to give, and I want you to kind of follow along with how incredibly difficult it is to cross-examine an expert witness like this. Here is a back and forth where he's going to say, yes, it's very important to know the exact position of the body, except in this case, it's not at all important to know the exact position of the body. Now, I've cut it to get them shorter. All three are just little clips I'm giving you, so we won't be here all night redoing the testimony.
Looking at pedestrian accidents, it's important to try, if you can, understand the exact positioning of the body, isn't it?
If a collision occurred, yes.
You would want to know, if it is a collision between a car and a pedestrian, whether the person was fully impacted or it was a clipping type incident. Wouldn't you want to know that if you could?
That would certainly affect the trajectory, yes.
So you
It's
do
sad.
not want to know where the point of impact is?
In this particular case, no, I don't think it would be helpful.
You would not want to know the body position?
I don't think that it would be helpful in determining, because again, we have to start with, does the damage, is it consistent with the collision?
So let's stop it there. The next thing that Hank Brennan points out is that the ARCCA testing intentionally used different arms on the test dummy. One of them was a lower weight arm, and it was used several times. And this lower weight arm would have not weighed as much as John O'Keefe's. And the Commonwealth wants to say that would make it different. Here's how the cross-examination went.
When you did these tests, you chose an arm from a Hybrid 3 crash dummy, didn't you?
Yes.
You can take that down, Ms. Gilman. Now, when you made that choice, you knew that John O'Keefe's arm, based on the statistics and his weight of being 216 pounds, you knew that his arm weight would be 11.8 pounds, didn't you?
Yes.
And you knew that he was 6'1" tall.
Yes.
When you decided to choose an arm in this case, you didn't choose the arm closest to his weight, did you?
It was representative enough, yes.
It was representative enough.
It was close enough, yes, sir.
Close enough. Wouldn't you want to get an arm most closely related to his actual weight?
I don't know that you can have custom-made ATDs.
You probably can't custom make them, but they have one that's 12 pounds. You know that, don't you?
Are you referring to the 95th percentile?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
So there's a 12-pound arm. Mr. O'Keefe's is 11.86 according to the statistics. You know that, right?
Yes.
You looked it up.
Yes.
You didn't tell us that on direct, though, did you?
I don't believe I was asked that.
No.
So I do want to point out what a bizarre conversation this is, right? They're talking about the weight of a test dummy's arm and going back and forth about whether, when they start talking about the 95th percentile, the 50th percentile, they're talking about the percentile that the person would be in terms of weight or size within their gender. Usually the 50th percentile crash test dummy is, however, done, at least it was back when I was doing product liability cases, is 50th percentile for men, which means that pretty much all women and 50% of men are smaller than that. And then 50% of men are larger than the test dummy that's used. So in any event, the witness does not agree at all that this will make a difference. Brennan points out that this is a 26% difference in the weight, but Wolfe says, yeah, that's just not going to change anything. He's adamant on that.
Are you saying, under oath right now, that a 26.3% difference had no impact on the calculations in that study? It would have no impact at all?
The calculations, yes, but in terms of the damage, no, I don't think that 1 pound difference, when we're talking about something that's 6,000 pounds, striking something that's, quite frankly, whether it's 9.4 or it's 11 something, it's not, you're not going to get a difference in the damage.
And
So Brennan, the argument that he's making is, look, you should compare 6,000 pounds worth of car to a tiny percent difference in how much the arm weighs. And that is not going to make a significant difference in terms of the injuries. But that wasn't really the question, because it wasn't, well, he does say in terms of the damage to the vehicle. But it is a difference, and he acknowledged that it was different in terms of the actual calculations he would made. But he does not believe it would have made a difference in whether or not the taillight broke or how it broke. So Brennan argues one thing it would change is the relative speed of the vehicle. He argues that you say this is a 10-mile-per-hour test, but really it's only a 7-mile and something test because of the fact that you used a smaller arm. Isn't that true? But we never really got an answer on that. They just sort of argued about it a little bit, and we never really got an answer. And that is exactly my point about expert witnesses, because at this point, we don't know. The jury doesn't know. It all becomes about, do you believe this witness? And so I think people back into the expert witness they believe one of a couple of different ways. One might be, I believe this particular side of the case, therefore I believe these experts. The other would be, what a nice guy, what a great expert, I believe him, therefore I believe this case. Neither of those is really what's supposed to be happening. What's supposed to be happening with expert witness testimony is that you get an idea of what's the truth, what's actually happening. You're supposed to understand the science. But here we just got, I mean, what do we know? 26.3%. Brennan seems to think it makes a big difference. The witness says it doesn't make a difference at all. We will hear from the Commonwealth expert who will come and say it makes a huge difference. And then we're just left basically in the same position we were in before. It's just a question of which witness we choose to believe, not a question of which one we understood, because we don't really. Maybe I'm speaking for myself as a non-science person. Maybe all of you thoroughly understand this, but for me, I don't. And I think a lot of people in the jury won't either. All right. So there is, it is very difficult, like I said, to cross-examine somebody like this. One of the things that Brennan did point out was that point I made about the crash test dummy that you saw being hit by the car was restrained, and probably for a dozen reasons, so as not to hurt anyone in the area around it, and for other reasons. But it did mean that the body did not move in the same way that it would have. So Brennan, let's get in one point. In the 17-mile-per-hour test that they ran, pieces of taillight actually hit the sweater of the dummy. And that's important because, according to the Commonwealth, they found little pieces of taillight embedded in John O'Keefe's sweater.
This speed, you can see the shards of taillight. You can see them move, can't you?
When you say move, you mean just
Not stationary.
yeah, I mean they're moving from the taillight as they brake.
Detached from the taillight.
Correct, they're broken.
That could create a debris field, yes?
Yes.
And you can see them floating in the air, some of them actually floating and then touching the sweater. Do you see that?
Possibly. Some of it might be, again, some of that polyurethane foam.
Yeah, some might be. And why don't we play it again so we can see clearly? Some might be taillight shards too, right? That black object spinning, that's not poly foam, is it?
No, it would not be.
That'd be taillight shard, right?
Correct.
And so even at this speed, you can see in this type of collision, there is significant, bless you, significant amount of taillight shards that are broken from the taillight and spewing into the air, yes? Well, the fact that
I think I cut it off there by mistake. Sorry about that. So I thought the yes was his answer. There are a couple of people I haven't been thanking. First of all, Olivia's mom, aka Sue, has been a member for 14 months. That's awesome, and is talking about. It seems to her that some of this testing would have dislocated the dummy's shoulder or John O'Keefe's shoulder, and he did not have any breaks. He did not have a dislocated shoulder. He did have mysterious markings on his arms. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, please check out the video I dropped last night on I asked ChatGPT about those injuries. I put the picture into ChatGPT and I said, what do you think? What do you think about these injuries? So anyway, Michael, thank you very much for your super chat. I appreciate it. And Angel, well, thank you. I appreciate your nice comment. Thank you very much for your super chat as well. One more request. If you're just coming in, would you mind hitting the like button? I'd appreciate it. All right, we're heading into test C, the next test, which is an arm suspended in the air. We talked about that, and here is Brennan's cross about that arm dangling in the air.
it's just floating up in the sky like that, it's very different than if it was attached to a person or a dummy, isn't it?
In terms of how it moves immediately after the impact, yes.
Not just how it moves, as far as the impact. Isn't it different?
I don't know that I agree with that.
Okay. Well, wouldn't you say that in addition to the arm, if you had another 200 plus pounds being held down by gravity, that would affect the force that's acting on the arm?
Well, the arm again is going to be accelerated, but the center of mass of the body is not going to see that acceleration.
Test C. Could you play this, please? You could fast forward a little bit, please. Okay. How many times do you think that arm spun around?
A lot.
I don't know.
That's not what would happen to a person who got hit. Their arm wouldn't spin through their body like that, would it?
Correct. It
Their
would
arm
not.
wouldn't spin that many times.
No.
There'd be the pull of their body weight, yes?
I'm sorry, what was your
There'd be
question?
the pull of their body weight.
The body weight, yeah, would affect the movement afterwards, yeah.
There is a reason why at 15 miles per hour, the damage is much different than the other test at 17 miles per hour, isn't there?
Correct.
Right, because at 17 miles per hour, you have a dummy that is strapped by a harness in its pelvis, and when it's hitting the arm, it's affecting it much differently than just a arm floating in air. Yes?
No, I don't agree with that. The primary reason there's a difference in the damage is because of the amount of the arm that's outstretched and interacting with the taillights. There's a difference in those two tests.
Mm-hmm. And so the body and the weight of the body, you're saying, has nothing to do with the amount of damage.
Not in these tests, no.
And now they're going to talk about test F, where there was a different arm put on the dummy, and the dummy was placed further into the line of the vehicle. In other words, instead of being on the side, remember how you saw the dummy spin down the side? This dummy was more behind the vehicle. And so here you'll see that test and hear the cross.
So the rescue Randy's placed much further in the car than the other type of test that would be more similar to a clip, yes?
Correct.
Next photo, please. Okay. And that is the result of the impact?
So looking at this, I had to wonder if this picture was helpful for Karen Reed, because in a lot of ways, that picture looks kind of like what I picture the scene looking like if the Commonwealth's claims are true, because you've got Karen Reed's vehicle, assuming she pulls away. You've got John O'Keefe slightly to the right. It would have been even more into the yard. But remember, they put him more in the center of the vehicle and less to the side. And John O'Keefe, or the body, would then be on the ground behind the vehicle. And of course, that wouldn't have been the case at first, because the vehicle is moving backwards as the Commonwealth has it. So you would think the body might fly off, but the car might even be behind it. But I did wonder about this picture, because this picture shows a body lying on the ground following this. And I just thought, is that helpful? All right.
Correct.
Do you see the debris field?
Yes.
Is it near rescue Randy?
Some of it is, yes.
Yeah, it's spread out a little bit, yes?
That's fair, yes.
But it's not right on his body. It's a distance from his body, yes?
There may be some, I can't tell from this photo, there may be some around his body, but yes, there's also debris close to the Lexus as well.
Why would that matter? Well, it's because if the debris not just around John O'Keefe, then it might explain why it took the Commonwealth so long to find all the pieces and why the first people out there didn't find it. So I would not be at all surprised to hear that argument coming from Hank Brennan pretty soon, or in closing. Megan, thank you so much for gifting 5 lawyerly memberships. I appreciate that. All right. I meant to say, could you hit the like button? Did I do that? If I forgot, would you mind? Okay. And so on the demonstrations, one of the important points that you heard Daniel Wolfe make on direct examination with Karen Reed's lawyer, Alan Jackson, was that there weren't holes in that sweatshirt that they had put on the test dummy. That is really important, because there is an all-important question about how exactly those large scratches on John O'Keefe's arm got there. Karen Reed says they were from the dog inside the home, Chloe. Then the Commonwealth says, no, they were from the taillight. So here is what was said.
And this is the demonstration where you didn't turn on the videotape, so we don't have a videotape?
Correct, we had the false start, yep.
What's that?
We had the false start.
The false start. Is there another picture after this? Those clothes.
That was super powerful. This is the test that they did not show where they said they lost the videotape, and you can see that there are actually tears in the clothing. Now, one of the things I do want to notice, I think the tears are on the wrong side. Remember that with John O'Keefe's arm, the scratches were along here. The blue paint demonstration showed that fairly clearly for the Commonwealth. But it looks to me like here the injuries, or not the injuries, the holes are on the inside of the arm. That might not matter because no one really knows how the body went, and no one claims to know how the body went. But I did notice that difference. But I do see that there are holes there, as they point out.
Are there holes or tears in the clothes?
Yes, there's damage that's consistent with road rash when clothing or a body makes contact with the pavement and is grinding into the pavement.
Pavement's hard.
Yes.
How about frozen ground, frozen dirt?
Is that hard?
Yeah.
I suppose it can be.
In the hard.
So in test E, Brennan pointed out that the dummy is harnessed in, and he makes some really important points about this. Here we go.
Harness prevents the dummy from being thrown naturally.
Correct.
The harness affects your ability or one's ability to see the study and see what the trajectory would be after impact, correct?
Well, that wasn't the purpose of the study, to assess the trajectory, sir.
I understand. I'm not trying to criticize, but it affects the ability to see the trajectory when the dummy's on a harness, doesn't it?
Yes.
We can start with. If you could stop it right there. And you can see the feet aren't as firmly planted on the ground as a person would be in most circumstances because of that harness, yes?
Correct.
And that affects gravity, doesn't it?
Affects gravity?
Well, when the car hits, the gravity, the weight of the dummy is less because it's held up by a harness, isn't it?
Right. So gravity really, again, is suspended at this point, just above the ground.
The arm that's extended, is there a glass in that hand?
No, there's not more weight in the hand.
So in test.
So now he's going to talk on test F about them using a bigger arm, switching arms, using a different arm for this test and for the other test.
F, did you put the hybrid on the Randy, or did you keep Randy's original arm?
It's just the rescue Randy in the last test.
On F.
Correct.
This one, you have the hybrid arm on Randy.
Correct.
So you're switching up between tests, what pieces you're using, aren't you?
I would say adding, but
Well, adding and subtracting. It doesn't have two arms. There's one off, one on. One's Randy and one's hybrid. So you're switching.
yes.
Different result.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Okay.
Are you trying to say a different result between test F and this test? Because they're not the same test.
Oh, I understand. I understand. If we can have this come back a little bit more. Okay, and let it run. Stop. You can see the shattered taillight moving, and most of it's moving in the same direction, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's what creates a debris field after a collision, doesn't it?
Yes, I mean, components will break off and fall to the ground, yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, since Randy is on a harness, he's not going to be thrown the same way as it would happen in real life. I want to ask you some questions. Can you bring it back to right before the collision, please? Now, Randy being on a harness, it's not like real life when the Lexus goes by, could continue to push him with it, right? He can't go with the car or the Lexus because he's on a harness. Yes?
Correct. He's not going to move from that position.
If you can move forward, do you see Randy's feet?
Yes.
See the right foot?
Yes.
It's twisting, right?
Correct.
Turning. Stop. Conclusions that you offered to the jury today. Did you consider this photograph?
No.
Did you know?
And what this photograph is a photograph of John O'Keefe's shoe, which came off during whatever, whether by the course of people leaving him there or whether because he was hit. His shoe came off and was lying right there at the curb near his body, but not with his body, a little bit away from it. And so Hank Brennan is suggesting that when you see that body rotate, that maybe that's when he lost his shoe.
That this sneaker was up against a curb in the area,
Yes.
and you didn't consider this at all?
Wasn't a part of my analysis.
Okay. can go back to the video. You see the spin and rotation on the foot?
Yes.
Can you keep going? In the turn of the sneaker?
Yes.
Okay. I want you to go back, Ms. Gilman, please, to the point of impact. In your studies, you would agree there can be a clip of a pedestrian that causes significant damage to a taillight where the pedestrian incurs no lower body injuries whatsoever. That can happen, can it?
Well, I don't know that I would describe this as a clip to the arm.
So those are two really, really important points. First of all, some evidence that maybe it would make sense that John O'Keefe's shoe would come off, maybe even in the roadway while his body would end up somewhere else. Maybe that would make sense. And then secondly, the suggestion, because we did see the body kind of roll down the side without actually colliding, that maybe he ended up not having lower body injuries, and maybe that would actually be possible in a collision like this. So Hank Brennan is taking ARCCA's own testing to support some of the points he wants to make. He's finding little factors in there that he thinks can help him.
A pedestrian could be involved in a full-on impact causing that amount of damage to the taillight that's reflected in this video, but suffer no lower body injuries. Isn't that fair to say?
I don't address injuries, sir.
Well, let's play it forward. Do we ever see Randy's knees hit the car? Hips? Ribs?
I see the foot getting run over, but I don't think there was contact with the legs, no.
You said that you would expect to see, not that you could. What you said on direct is you would expect to see panel deformation.
Let me stop this right there so I can explain where we're headed next. So one of the things that did not happen, and the ARCCA witnesses say, because that didn't happen, we believe that it could not possibly have been a car accident. Instead, it has to have been something else happened to John O'Keefe. And that's that there wasn't a significant amount of damage on Karen Reed's car. There was the broken taillight, but it wasn't as if a body slammed into it. There wasn't major, what they call deformation of the back of the car. It wasn't all messed up. The side of the car wasn't messed up. There wasn't evidence of any collision with a pedestrian other than that one piece of taillight. That was the only thing wrong with the car. There was a minor amount of scuffing, you're going to hear Hank Brennan say.
Yes.
And you said in this case there was none, right?
No panel
Talking about
deformation.
the defendant's Lexus. You said, I would expect to see panel deformation, and in this case, the defendant's Lexus, there was none. That's what you told us on direct.
Correct.
Let's watch let's watch your video. Play it ahead. Is there any panel deformation? Stop. In this?
No, sir.
Okay. So when you said on direct examination, relative to the defendant's Lexus, you would expect panel deformation, there was none. There are examples, one that you gave us yourself, where there is a collision causing this amount of damage to a taillight where there's no panel deformation.
I'm going to allow it.
Right?
If I recall, I think you're referring to my prior testimony in another proceeding where I had not conducted this testing yet. So ultimately, that's part of the reason why this testing was conducted, to evaluate that.
In this case, the damage to the right rear taillight, there's no panel deformation here, is there?
Correct, there is not.
And he is saying that there would have been if there had been a collision, and that he can show that from his testing. So we'll go ahead. There was also a little testimony. I've got to go back and watch it again. It was right at the end where Hank Brennan kind of implied that maybe in one of the videos, the dummy was wearing a hat and it didn't come off. That was one of the things that was mentioned in opening statement. Alan Jackson mentioned that John O'Keefe had a hat. And so I've got to go back and watch that. I don't remember in that last clip, there wasn't a hat. So I got to go back and figure that out. Megan, you just made my evening. Thank you for your very nice super chat and for your comment. I really appreciate that. And Candace, thank you as well. And I want to give a shout out to our mods, Marlon and Mama Pinks, who are doing yeoman's work through all of this case, because this is a hard case to cover. It is very contentious, as we all know and can see. Now, so one want to do now is ask you another question. I would like to get your opinion. Let's go back and check what happened on our last poll. So the question was the experts' testing convincing? And 77%, vast majority, said yes, it was convincing. 12% said no, and 12% said somewhat. So, okay, that's overwhelming. If you add the somewhat in the yes, then that is definitely in Karen Reed's favor. All right, and let's do our last poll. I want to ask you, and tell you what, before I start the poll, let me talk a little bit about something. One of the things that I did wonder about is, does this convince the jury that, because they focus so hard on the vehicle hitting the dummy, and in fact, the taillight did break and the pieces did scatter and the body did get thrown. And is that convincing the jury? Not what Karen Reed wants to convince them of, which is that it would be impossible for that to happen. But instead, is it convincing the jury that, why, yes, that actually could happen. The car could actually hit the arm, the taillights could go. Now, they say there are some big differences. One is the back of the car was all smashed in. It was just a taillight that was broken out. And the Commonwealth's argument is, yeah, well, that's because of the angle and where he was. He wasn't right back of the car like you placed your dummy. So the question then is this going to help the defense or the prosecution? So did today help the defense? We'll do yes, no. We'll do maybe we'll add a neither. And then we'll add one more, not sure, in response to your request for more options. Okay. All right. So I'm curious what y'all think about that and what you think about that concern I had, which is that I wonder if this is going to be persuading the jury that they have now visualized and seen what it could look like for the body to hit the back of the car, for the taillight to shatter, etc. So I'm curious what you think about that. All right, let's head over. We'll do some questions while our poll is going. And if you could put question marks at the front, I'll have a much better shot of finding it in the chat as the chat rolls by. So if you would put some question marks at the front, and I will look to see what y'all are thinking, what you're asking about. And I wonder too who followed Lori Vallow Daybell today. I'm behind on that case, except I do know she was actually kicked out of court. It's like, gosh, I have got to see this. So I watched that little clip, and there is a lot going on in that case. So I think what I'll probably do is kind of go back and forth covering the two cases. I just am so frustrated that two cases that we've covered in the past extensively just are colliding like this. It's very frustrating because I want to cover everything. I want to see both cases at once myself. All right. Brady Goat 12 wants to know, do you feel that Wolfe was trustworthy? Well, Brady Goat, I gave a statement up front that was just sort of full disclosure. I really time trusting expert witnesses, and this is because of my extensive background hiring and deposing, dealing with expert witnesses in the context of auto product liability, which is exactly where these experts come from. That's their background, is the auto and the car wrecks and that sort of thing. And the reason is because the way the system is set up, you have experts who are hired. I represented the people who have been injured by automobiles. We would be claiming that the auto was defective, product defect. And the auto manufacturer would be saying, no, there was no defect in the vehicle. Well, they went to the exact same people over and over. It's not just we went to the exact same people over and over. And miraculously, coincidentally, those people always sided with whichever side it was that they went to. And so for the auto manufacturers, there was never a product defect ever. And then on the other side, for the plaintiffs, every vehicle was defective. And so that was, I just came to believe that the system is creating problems because it's so expensive. And it's becoming more and more required that you have it, but everybody ends up offsetting everybody, or maybe just a little bit of, maybe one expert's a little better, or maybe a little more personable, not things that are directly related to the truth of the matter. And so that is a concern to me. So not related to Wolfe, that's more my statement in general about experts. How did this help the Commonwealth? Coffee Cake asks. Well, the way I'm concerned that I was asking about is and I don't mean concerned. Well, I'll just leave it at that. The thing that made me pause was the fact that you did see, especially on that side view where the dummy goes down the side, not touching the car. It was all because the way it clipped was really far to the side. So really all you did have in that case was the breaking of the taillight, and you didn't have a lot of deformation, and you didn't have injuries to the body of the test dummy. In the other one, it was a total pancake, just smash. But the argument from the Commonwealth was that was because of the positioning of the body, and it was different in John O'Keefe's case. And no one knows, right? No one knows. So my question was, is this helping the Commonwealth by showing the jury that there is some possibility out there where you can end up with a vehicle that looks like this and a person without broken bones? And I'm curious what y'all think, whether you think it was a good day or how it worked. I'm saying, well, for the comments we've been getting, it's looking like there's a fairly question here. Who is paying for the defense lawyers? It would be Karen Reed. Now, she has done some fundraising, but it's Karen Reed, her family. They are the ones paying for that. And it's brutal. These witnesses, it does sound like to me, are charging less than normal, reasonable rates. I mean, it is great publicity for them. So it does seem like they're charging very, very carefully. They're not charging maybe as much as I would be used to in some of these cases, but she's doing it on her own. There's no one doing that for her. Amber Alexander wants to know, why do you think Karen backed up? I'm on the guilt side, but curious why the innocent think she did that. I do not know the answer. Maybe someone could put in the chat. If you believe that, tell us why. I don't know why she backed up. So if you have a theory on that, let me know. Okay. Can the defense call back the coroner? Professor Phil Bell asks. I cannot remember how they released the coroner. I don't remember if they released the coroner for all purposes, if they said that they might call the coroner back. I just don't recall. That's a great question, and a greater question than I can answer, Professor Bell. Cat Artist has been a member for 9 months. Thank you. She's trusting my real life opinion, which is that we do have a problem with this entire system. So thank you, Cat Artist. I appreciate that. I'm honored. And Karen is a new member. Wonderful to have you. We will be having our next members only. In fact, we may do one this weekend. We did an impromptu pop-up members only live stream yesterday. I was going to be preparing for the Lori Vallow Daybell trial and going through some of the materials. And I thought, well, let's just do it together. So we went through, read through, talked about one of the documents, 3 of the documents actually, to get ready. And the next thing I want to do, we've got 2 things. One is I want to listen to a recording of Brandon Boudreaux's testimony in the Lori Vallow Daybell first trial. And I thought we might have fun doing that together, just kind of hanging out. And then the other thing, we are writing a true crime novel. We have been having really a lot of fun with that. So, and we're supposed to do that again next week. It's supposed to be our next meeting on that. So, Karen, I'm so glad you're a new member. If you're not a member, you should see the word join down by the channel name. If you don't see that, you're probably on your iPhone. So you'll have to go in through your regular computer, or you'll have to go in through your browser on your phone. You can't use the YouTube app. Some kind of dispute between YouTube and Apple, I think. So in any event, we would love to have you as a member. If you might get one of the 5 early memberships gifted by Megan a little bit ago. And YouTube does that randomly, but you have to turn on the ability to receive that. Our mods will put in the chat how exactly you do that. All right. Neuropsych Zena says, although split on Karen Reed, we are all fairly united on Lori. Thus, it's a bit of a relief when you discuss Lori. I have to tell you, Neuropsych Tina, it's a relief for me too. I just find it a lot easier. I don't know. I find this case difficult. I've had to take, mental breaks from this, a little recovery time, because I will tell you what, the vitriol in this is astonishing. All right. Megan is a criminal defense attorney for 15 years. Wow, that is awesome. That's really cool. I'm honored that you're here and has been supportive of Karen Reed, the last trial and this trial, but feels like the defense lost the case today. I am a little curious about how the jury will describe what happened today when they come out on the other side with their verdict. I'm curious about that. Thank you very much for your insights, Megan. I appreciate that. All right, a few more questions over here. Verity, I may have skipped one. Why can't witnesses or experts come back? In some jurisdictions, I thought that was possible if they don't follow the case. Well, normally there should be a heads up to the witness. Just so you know, you may come back and here's what's expected of you. Because otherwise they may just start reading the newspaper. Who would know? Talking to their neighbors. They would have no idea they shouldn't do that. So typically the witness, at the end of the testimony by the witness, there will be a discussion about, is the witness released? You'll hear the judge say, and the attorney will say, yes, released, or, no, we might need back. And that's kind of the way the discussion runs. Do you think ARCCA's biomedical engineer will report that John's arm would have fractured and his shoulder or rotator cuff would have been injured? Maybe. That is testimony that we're going to hear on Monday. We're going to hear from the injury side, the biomechanical side. That's going to be coming next with another ARCCA witness. This was the reconstruction, and then we're also going to have the biomechanical injury side of the testimony on Monday. So we will find out. And I'm sure it will be polished and professional, just as this witness was. These witnesses are extremely good at what they do. They are really skilled, very smart. Coffee Cake. The FBI hired these guys and sent their report to both. They don't have any skin in the game, don't know who Karen was. How could they not be trustworthy? Well, one of the things that Brennan pointed out, Coffee Cake, is that their opinion now is different from what they said in the first trial. I can't say for sure what exactly they said in their FBI report, but at trial, they talked about this cup being hurled into the back of the taillight, or at least this witness did. And now that's off the table, no longer believing that the glass was hurled into the taillight. So I guess that would be the issue that they'd be raising. Katina, so glad to have you as a new member. Glad you are with us. And let's let me head back over here. All right. Wow. Little Biddle has a very big question in all red. What did you think about the cost for the Commonwealth's accident reconstructionist, plus or minus $400,000? Remember my background that I told you. That is not crazy at all, which is part of the reason that I think it's pricing out of the market. Most defendants couldn't do that. Most plaintiffs can't do that in an auto product. In the defense side, that translates into people can't bring experts to counter anyone the prosecution brings. In the product liability civil side, it translates into the plaintiff. The lawyers won't take the case unless it's a very, very serious injury. They're not, you can't take a case where someone has an arm broken in two places. You can't even begin to cover the expert witnesses. So I was not in any way shocked by that. But I do want to add this, an enormous percentage of that, I think 300,000, which seems crazy, related to the vehicle. And their plan was, since they did no destructive testing, to sell it at the end and then give all of that to the Commonwealth. So it won't be as high as that actual number. Can't remember the amount of the vehicle, but that won't all in the end be charged. So one thing that the ARCCA witnesses did, and this is very, very common, is the experts don't really put their bill together until after the trial. And so they'll often say, well, I think it'll be about this. Later, if you depose them in the next case, because remember, these experts go from case to case, just as the lawyers do. So you begin to know them. Then if they still have it, they may be able to tell you that it was actually some large amount that got charged after the fact. But at the time of trial, it may be. All right. Who pays? I think I answered that, Ashkin. Beth, body end up on the lawn to the left if the strike was on the right side. I'm really bad with right, left. Let's see. I think that the strike was on the left and the body was, nope. I think that the strike was on the right and the body was on the right. Okay. I'm terrible with right, left. So let's say here's the car and here's the body. I think the car backs up, he hits, and then he goes out this way. So here's the car. He's on the side over here and he goes. Don't you think an impact like that would have shattered the bone? Oh, thank you, Texas Tupac. That's a very nice comment. So I do not, I don't know. I don't know whether it would have shattered the bone. I guess it all depends on where he got hit. If he got hit on just the arm, and maybe it wasn't a hit that would have hurt him, but he was like the Commonwealth is arguing blow, then maybe it wouldn't have broken a bone. But I don't really feel like I know the answer to that. But that is what the witness on Monday will try to tell us. So we will find out more. All right. Have I answered? Oh, I think Phil's was a super chat. So anyway, thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. I'm sorry I can't answer that question for you. All right. And okay. Well, I will look forward to seeing some of our members, hopefully over this week, hoping to do one of our live streams this weekend. And then next week we'll be doing the true crime novel that we're writing. And I will see everybody on Monday. We will probably cover the Lori Vallow Daybell trial, since I'm going to try to alternate, but I don't know. It's a really big day for Karen Reed because we've got the second ARCCA witness coming. So write and let me know. What do you want me to cover? I'm trying to figure it all out. I will look forward to seeing y'all next week.